Hey everybody, thanks very much for coming here and hearing about Guerilla testing. So just to ask that question again, does anybody do any UX testing in their work or in their place? One. Okay, what kind of stuff do you do?
So like we have web apps work for like responsive design, so we'll put screens in our mobile phones.
Yeah.
So like we usually kind of once or like we take 3 customers a month.
Oh yeah.
We go on site to them and we bring our own laptop.
Yeah.
We have like recording software running.
Yeah.
So then we record the screen while we get them through certain tasks.
Yeah.
And if we try not to narrate what they're doing.
Yeah, yeah.
So we get them to speak what they're each step they're doing, what they're thinking.
Yeah.
So like if we click the button, why are they clicking a button, what they expect it to do.
Yeah.
So then if there's any part of the process that you kind of see that needs improvement, then we make note and then we iterate improvement and then we do testing and then one later with different users.
Yeah, that's kind of, I'll go home. That's the presentation. Because I think that the main thing, and probably you'll agree with this, that the main thing you get from doing user testing is that you see and you realize that you are not your user. And this, I was presenting, or I was showing one of the guys I worked at my slides today, and he said that this was the biggest thing to kind of get, that it's very easy to think that, well, I'm designing, I know how it works, I'm a user, I'm the same as the people who are going to be using this thing, and if I know how to use it or if it works for me, I should be a good judge of it. But the problem is that we're really contaminated by the place we work. We know what the software does and we know how it should be used. And our customers who see it for the first time, they have no idea what it does. They have no idea how it should be used. And the usual response from developers when things don't go right with users is, well, you're using it wrong. And in fact, the problem is, well, you can't tell someone they're using it wrong. They're using it the way that makes most sense to them. And you, as a kind of a software engineer, should be kind of gearing your design of things towards how you imagine and how you know people will use it. So the purpose of kind of the stuff you do with going out and testing with real customers, and the stuff I'm going to talk about tonight, which is not with real customers, but still with real people, is to get real people to use your software. And then from that, you can see when something goes wrong, it's cringing. You kind of realize, God, yeah, it's so obvious why nobody could find that button or why nobody could figure out what this thing is supposed to do. But when it goes right as well, you're more confident that you're going down the right track and you can build on that. So I'll bring things just a little bit higher up for a moment and then I'll go back down into proper UX testing. So this is the design process in theory for a kind of software. So at the beginning, you have some research into something you want to make, and you have some kind of knowledge about who your customers are and what they're looking for, and kind of what their capabilities are and what kind of software or what hardware they have, that kind of thing. Then based on that, you design what your software should look like. So where the buttons are on screen, when you click on that, what happens next. Next on from that, you build it, and then next on from that, you put it into QA and they test and make sure it works. So that's theory, but reality is a little bit kind of messier than that. Now this isn't one of those slides where bang, everything changes, but you still have, in reality, you still have this research phase where you might be dealing with the business, or you might have kind of marketeers who want something in a particular way based on the information they have. So there's going to be a research phase to begin with. There still will be a test phase at the end where it goes into QA, because everywhere I've worked, QA have always made sure that they get their 2 weeks to test it before everything goes out. And in the middle, there's this kind of mix of kind of design and building happening at the same time. And ideally, if you saw on the last slide, it was kind of an artificial separation between design and building. But in reality, there's this overlap. So at the start, you have a lot of designing, where you're kind of thinking how the thing should look and how it should work, and you probably are building a little bit. And then towards the end, you have very little designing, you're nearly all building. But you still probably have things you want to tweak at the very last minute. You realize, oh, that button should be a different color, or that text doesn't read right. But as the point is that there is this kind of continuous kind of designing and building interaction going on before it gets lobbed into QA for 2 weeks, and then it's out. This is the nightmare scenario. So this happens quite a lot. I'm sure everyone will recognize it. So there was no research. You just started building straight away. As you went on building, you realize, oh crap, I haven't actually designed anything here. So it gets thrown into the graphic designer to kind of make it look pretty before it gets lobbed into QA. And QA always make sure they have their 2 weeks. But by the time it gets to the customer, it's just a horrendous lump of rubbish. So this is the bit I'll be talking about tonight. So this idea of first you have your research phase, at the end you have your QA, but in the middle you have a kind of an interaction between development and design. So this is our UX process in Laya. So we start off with workshops. So this would take in kind of marketing department, business heads, that kind of thing, where everybody kind of sits around and kind of throws around kind of wireframes of what it could look like, throws out some ideas. Then after that, we kind of settle on, okay, this is an approach we like. What we do is we make prototypes of those. So what we try to aim for always is a HTML type prototype. So it's not working, it's not integrated with any kind of backend or anything, but it would look real to the customer. It doesn't need to do everything, because when you come to testing it in a user test, everything will be really scripted anyway. So it doesn't matter if it leads nowhere, or if it doesn't matter if there's dead links, so long as your prototype is good enough to give the impression to the customer. So guerrilla testing first, and then later on we do two phases of formal UX testing. So the difference between guerrilla testing and formal UX testing is where you get your customers from. In formal UX testing, you would recruit customers. We recruit them through an agency in Ballincollig, and you go out to a specific kind of lab where everything will be set up, and you can test with them proper. Or you can do what you do, which is you find your actual customers and you go on site and you test with them. Guerrilla testing is a little bit of a cheat. So rather than going and recruiting people, you go to where the people are, and you just ask them. I have this website. We're updating our website. Will you give us feedback on it? And what you find is that most people are really happy to give their opinion on things. That if you show them a website, and it's particularly if it's a website they're likely to use, they'll sit down for a while and they'll try it out, and they'll be very honest with you about what works and what doesn't work. So this is a Costa Coffee on the business park where Laya is, and that particular desk is my UX testing spot. And I'll give some advice kind of later on for picking a good spot, but this is a really neat spot because the way it's set up, well, first of all, I've asked the manager at Costa Coffee kind of do this. So every time I go in, she knows me at this stage, and she lets us kind of do this stuff here. But it's a nice spot because there's a double doors as you walk in. So when a customer walks in the front door, they got to go to get into a kind of the lobby area where this is in, and then they go further into the coffee shop itself. So this area is nice and quiet. It's also got me kind of sitting at this, and I can look out the window. So as people are approaching, I can kind of say, okay, that person, I might ask them, that person not really too interested. And then when they come in the door, I can almost trap them. And say, hey, I'm from Laya Healthcare, would you mind giving us feedback on the website? And probably about 3 out of 4 people will say yes. So before you go, when you're doing your UX testing, what kind of planning do you do beforehand?
So generally, if it depends on the type of customer, if they're long term or not, they might know more about the system already. But generally, if it's a new feature we've added, we kind of go with a test plan of a scenario we think they'd be using it on. Yeah. We show up then, like we email them on the day before the day, arrange a time, show up with like coffee and cupcakes, whatever. Stay there for like an hour approximately, like 20 minutes of a chat or kind of an interview, and then 20 minutes of getting into screencast what we're doing, and we watch it. Yeah. So we kind of run same as that now. We go through a plan, we print off 3 or 4 steps or questions. Yeah. And then see how fast they can get to the end goal without coming across any problems or struggles. Yeah. Yeah. Bang on. So the most important thing was, well, one of the most important things about what you said at the beginning, which is that you have your test plan before you go out. That if you land there, in front of people with your website and say, hey, can you use this? They're just going to sit down and kind of touch random buttons. Whereas you need to plan a test for them to do, and you have specific tasks that you want to see them go through. And the idea of the test plan is that you craft a kind of a way through the site. They kind of should touch off all the main areas you want to do, and that it kind of puts the site through its the motions. And it also gives something for the person to do, that they are not there kind of thinking, well, what will I click on next? But they're given a realistic scenario that they could actually get into. And what you find
is that when people are given a scenario, and even told, pretend you are John Smith or Mary Murphy, that they'll get quite passionate about John Smith and Mary Murphy and what doesn't work in the website for them. Even though it's a completely fictional scenario you give them, they start believing and they start acting their part, just as if they would in real life. So the first thing is, one, be very prepared with a test plan. The second thing is that this, I found, is the most important thing to have. That if you stand in front of somebody without this and say, hey, can I show you my website? They'll go, who are you? If you stand there like this, it's all different. So get this, it's the best €2 you'll ever invest in. And of course, dress kind of professional, and if you have a company badge, wear that so that they know who you are. So the right location is next. So for guerrilla testing in particular, picking your location has two important things. When you're doing formal UX testing, so you can pick the people you want to use, or in your case, you go to customers on site. When you're doing guerrilla testing, your location is going to pick the people who you come across. So you have to try and pick a location where there's an overlap, where you believe at least there's an overlap between the kind of people who your website or your app is targeting and the people who are going to be there. So the people at Costa Coffee, generally speaking, are kind of people who will be buying stuff from Laya Healthcare, so it's a good location. It's also good because it's got free Wi-Fi, which is handy. It's nice and warm. There's desk, we can sit down. There's this lobby area where it's nice and quiet. So it's a nice location. Depending on what you want to do, you might have to kind of sacrifice some things in guerrilla testing in order to accommodate kind of the location. But pick a nice location. And make sure that your scenario can actually be done in that location. So like I was saying with Costa Coffee, one of the nice things about it is that it's nice and comfortable, so you can sit down and you can talk to people. And for the kind of scenarios we're doing, it's really important that we can hear people's comments on the kind of things that they need from health insurance and that kind of thing. So think about the location and think about the people who are going to be there. And then what to expect. You will be blown away by how people will give you their time for free. That about 3 out of 4 people you approach and you ask, they will say, yeah, no problem. And they'll give you ask them, would you mind doing this for 5 minutes? You can expect them to give you about 15, and they'll just do it for free. The first time we went out in Laya, we had an idea that what we would do is we'd ask someone, can you give us a hand? And what we'll do in return is that we'll buy you your coffee or whatever you're having. We just gave up on that because people weren't allowing us to buy the coffee. They were just okay to help. And we found out that we could try to push it on people, please let me buy you coffee, but it was just going nowhere. So people will just help you for free. And it's really important, how prepared you are is going to affect how they react to you. So these people, when you are in kind of formal UX testing, these are people who are hired, they're being paid, so many euro a go to be there, So no matter how ill prepared you are, they'll sit through it. But for guerrilla testing, you need to have your game quite high, that you're giving this impression at least that you know what you're doing, and then people will respond likewise to that. But don't forget that people are doing this for free. So the people you ask, they're not being paid anything, they're just doing it out of the goodness of their heart. So there's some things which you can do in formal UX testing. Like in formal UX testing, you can sit people down for an hour and you can really grill them over different parts of the website. In guerrilla UX testing, you have to kind of sacrifice your kind of test plans a little bit to be able to take in the idea that people, you can't abuse the people who are willingly giving you their time. So a little bit of the science now. So one of the things with formal UX testing is that you can pick the number of people. So if you're sending out a survey, you can send it to 500 people. If you're recruiting people, you can pick however many people you think you have. With guerrilla testing, you're kind of at the mercy of however many people come along and however many people will agree to do it. But the good news is that 5 people is enough. And I'll go through the science of why in a second. But if I go back a couple of slides So first of all, 5 is enough, but look at the bottom where it says the best results come from testing with 5 people several times. So when you do it, you iterate quite often.
Yeah, roughly with like 3 or 4 customers.
Yeah. So you test it with 3 or 4 customers, you find something that's wrong, you improve it, and then you go back again. Yeah. So there's good scientific reason for that. So first of all, a standard usability test, you give people tasks, they run through it, they say what the problems are. What you get is you find out what the problems with your website are, and you also get some insights into what people are thinking. What you should do, just as a tip, you should always record what people are doing. Capture the screen and capture their faces as well. And the reason for that is that when you go back to your company and you say people had difficulty with this, guys there won't believe you, and you need a video to prove it to them. But why 5 is enough? So this is a graph of the usability problems found in a user test for any given number of users. So on average, for a well-planned usability test, one user will find about 31% of all the problems there are. So from that, you can generate a graph saying that when you get to about 15 people, you have found almost all the usability problems that are there. But at about 5, there's a sweet spot. So at 5, for every person you add, you're gaining the number of usability problems found. But after that, it starts to level out. And this takes you to about 85% of problems. So what you should do is at this point, quick going out, go back and fix all these problems you found, and then go out again and find another 5 people. And then you're not kind of just focusing on this last part with your next 5 people, but they'll find more and more and more, and you'll drill deeper down. So you're actually kind of wasting your time once you go past 5, because what will happen is you'll just start hearing the same problems over and over and over again. The next thing you should do, and I actually have something to give out to everybody. So do you want to give these out? So the next trick you should do. So the standard usability test is that you go through tasks, but there is a survey which is really good, and you should administer it anytime you do a test of any kind. So it's a really quick survey which I've sent around there. It's about 30 years old at this stage, and it's one of the good things about it is that it's become an industry benchmark. So when you administer a survey saying, do you like is the website good from 0 to 7, and somebody gives it a 4, well, what does that mean? Does that mean it's good, or does that mean it's above average, below average? What does 4 mean? One of the great things about this survey that I've sent around there is that because it's used in so many times, there's actually graphs done of kind of where the average kind of website is, or where the average app is, and you can rate yourself alongside that. And there's another thing that's good about it, which is that it's been proven to work on a very small number of people. So it's this survey, once you ask about 12 people to fill in this survey, you can be pretty confident that whatever the average mark they give you is going to be what however many number of people give you. But even if you ask it just of 5 people, what has been found is that you can be 75% confident that you're within 10 points of where the true score is. So suppose somebody gives your website a score of 80, and you asked 5 people, then you can be 75% certain that your score is somewhere between 70 and 90. So it works in quite a small number of people. And if you wanted to get a truly accurate number, you can just ask 12 people, which still isn't a big number. The good thing about that survey, which you should always kind of round up, because one of the things too you'll find is that people like filling in a survey at the end of doing a usability test. So it kind of bookends the whole thing, and they get to fill in something and feel like they've done something. But it's reliable, first of all, on a small number of people. It's reliable after a short amount of time. So there's studies out there saying that even after 5 seconds of looking at a website, someone fills in the survey, you'll have a very good mark of how good your website is. I don't know how true that is, but apparently it's the case. But what's really good is that it gives your website this benchmarking. So you can go back to your business and you can very confidently say, our website is above average, or our website is really bad and we need to do something about it. But that survey alone isn't enough. You still need to do the first thing, which is walking through your website, because just asking someone to fill in a survey like that and you get a number back and say your website is poor, well, what do you need to fix about it? So the survey alone isn't good enough. You have to actually talk to people as well to find out what the problems are. Now, for guerrilla testing, an ordinary survey. So surveys such as, what could you ask? Sorry, I should have prepared this. Survey like, how often do you buy knickers on the internet? If you ask that, you can ask this sort of thing in a guerrilla test, but I see everybody here has seen polls on the newspaper, opinion polls, and that kind of thing. So when opinion polls are generally conducted on about 1,000 people, and what that means is that it gives you a very large sample, so you can be confident that you can rate it back to the general world and the general population. And when you have an opinion poll done of 1,000 people, you can be 95% sure that it's accurate to within plus or minus 3%. Okay? The fewer people you take in a survey, the less confident you can be in your results, because suppose you only ask 5 people. How do you know that those 5 people, you didn't just encounter them by chance? And their opinions could just be by chance. So you can do a survey with kind of guerrilla techniques or with small numbers of people, but there's some kind of caveats. First of all, you need to think very hard about the people who you ask, and you need to be very sure that the people you're asking actually reflect your customers or the people you're targeting. But even still, you can be confident, and this is how you can be confident. So there's with a survey, there's two kind of interacting kind of variables. One is how confident you are in the results, and two, every survey is not going to be 100% accurate. It's going to be plus or minus a certain degree. Okay, so this is a table because it's kind of easier to explain in tables. So if you ask 20 people, you can be 75% confident that you're plus or minus 13% on whatever they say. So if you say 60% of people liked the new website, then you can be 75%. If you ask 20 people, you can be 75% confident that it's within 47%, and 73% of people like the new website. And of course, the more people you ask, the more confident or the more accurate you can be, and the higher you can say you can be 95% confident you're plus or minus 14%. So that's it. I hope it was useful. I think if there's only one person now kind of doing UX, it would be great if there was more people doing it, because yeah.
I'm not doing guerrilla UX, but we do UX and kind of trying to get it started a bit more in our organisation. And what I'm really curious about is, I think it's just really interesting the way you did it, guerrilla tactics, going to a coffee shop. I'm just wondering, how would that transfer to, say, if you're working, like our software is not a business to consumer software, it's kind of enterprise software.
Yeah.
So where do you kind of see the role of guerrilla kind of when you have a particular type of audience or user?
You have
to, those methods
you got to go and find them. Yeah. So if you're looking for kind of, if it's business to business, then go to a conference and grab people there. Yeah. That's kind of the point where your location decides who you're going to come across. So yeah, I don't know what you do, but if you just got to find the places where those people are, or else pay money and recruit them. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Have you ever used anything like usertesting.com, and how do you find it in comparison with doing, let's say, guerrilla tests or formal tests?
No, we haven't used it. Yeah. That's where they recruit people and do it for you, is it?
Yeah, basically you pay, I think it's 50 quid a user, and that person just uses your website, reads the test plan, and records themselves as they go around the website.
Yeah. No, I haven't used it. Yeah, I looked into a couple of ones like that, but we haven't used them. Yeah.
Is there any software you use in particular, or do you?
No, the only software I use is Microsoft Expression to screen grab and take in the video. The kind of stuff that you're talking about is kind of it's unmoderated user testing, so you need special software for that. It kind of prompts them to kind of do this task now, and at times how long they're doing it, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think it's reasonably kind of free flowing, I suppose. They just read the tasks and then they do the same kind of idea, but I think they only do it in 10 minutes, but you get the video recording then, or else it's at least a sound recording.
Yeah.
So they talk through the tasks.
Yeah.
And you still have to go back afterwards and listen to the whole process and mark off whatever it is. But the advantage is that you can easily recruit people, and you can specify where in the world they should be and more or less what profession they should be in, and kind of what how used to using technology they are and things like that.
Yeah.
So you can kind of specify it a bit. And
yeah, that's good. Kind of the one thing you're missing there is the kind of like when we're sitting beside someone saying Costa, we can ask them kind of random questions. So you kind of with the unmoderated stuff you lose that possibility to ask people questions, but it's still good.
You're saying people are really gracious with their time, and they are. In terms of, they're also very gracious and they want to be kind of agreeable with you.
Yeah.
So, is it simply through the setting of tasks do you get around that, or do you use specific techniques?
There's different techniques. One is kind of what you were saying, that you don't talk or you talk as little as possible. There's kind of one of the things which you should always do is you should never say that you designed the site or you were involved in it. You should kind of distance yourself as much from it as possible, because then they don't feel obliged to kind of flatter you, because that's a big problem. Yeah. So yeah, that one definitely. Kind of no matter what they say, don't try and show emotion. No matter how bad it's going, definitely don't kind of prompt them. Why don't you try to do that or whatever. Or one thing.
Would you specifically say somebody else designed it?
Oh yeah. And you should just say I'm the guy that's hired just to test it. One of the things you should always avoid is never ask kind of would you questions. Because people will just make up answers with would you questions, and they'll try and guess what you would like them to say. So if you ask someone, do you think in real life you would have seen that? They'll always say, oh yeah, definitely in real life I would have seen that. But you can see the proof of the pudding is that they didn't. So you always try and base it on. There's a rule of thumb which is never listen to your user. Always watch what they do. So if you ask them stuff, they'll try and give you the answer they want you to hear, or they think you want to hear. Whereas if you give them tasks and watch them do it, then that's the proof.
As a product designer, showing somebody product and wondering what they think of it, I always say I'm really interested in what you don't like about it.
Yeah.
So you give people permission to not like it.
Yeah, that's a good one too. Yeah.
Are people is it easy to film? Like, do people have a problem with being filmed?
No, never. I'm amazed. Well, like I always tell them that it's like people know kind of, particularly people working in a business park, they know that businesses, they're not interested in putting on videos of them on YouTube or anything like that. That they know it, they know it's going to go nowhere. And I always ask, but I've never had anybody, refuse. And if they do refuse, they refuse. That's all right.
From a legal point of view, don't you have to make them sign some kind of release form or something, or
no?
Is that fine? All right.
Because it's obvious from the videos that they're doing it voluntarily, so it's not going anywhere anyway.
Your table there on the last slide was on the top. Your variable was basically the number of people you're sending to.
Yeah.
It was a little bit less clear on the confidence. Is that just you're just stating things about the confidence, or is that something you're changing, like?
So
you're making more questions or something like that.
So this is kind of, so there's when you're doing a survey, there's two things. You don't hear so much in an opinion poll, but I'll give the example of an opinion poll. So 1,000 people were asked who they're going to vote for in the next election, and 50% of people said that they were going to, or we'll pick another number. We'll say 40% of people said that they were going to vote for the Red Party. Now, that's only the 1,000 people who were asked. It's not everybody who's going to vote on election day. So there's going to be some kind of randomness in there where you're not 100% accurate in the results you come back with. But the more people you ask, the more accurate you're going to be. So if you ask 1,000 people, you can be 95% certain that the result you have is within plus or minus 3%. And with these ones here, if you ask 20 people, you can be 75% certain that your result is going to be plus or minus 13%.
So that you're just stating things about various levels of confidence in the same survey. You're not saying these are different surveys.
No. Yeah. So if you ask any question, you can be 75% confident that you're plus or minus 13% with 20 people. Now that does assume that the people you're asking are random, and that's got a big caveat to it, because even if the kind of the standard way of asking or thinking about asking surveys that you go onto the street and you ask people, but you go onto the street at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon, who's passing by? It's not random. I mean, there's only a certain amount of people who walk the streets at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. So getting that sample of people for a survey and being confident that sample, that there is kind of an equal probability that anybody who you're interested in could be asked a question, that's what's really important.
Great. Thanks very much.